Okay, welcome back after your spring break, or for some of you, welcome back, period. This video should be watched first because there's a few things to know. Number one, I think one of your videos might talk about making up for your third quarter F that is no longer on the table, because if you did not respond to me by now, that means that you probably were not thinking about doing any work anyway. That is another issue for you to deal with, but this is the plan that we have for the rest of the year. 9.2a, 9.2b, etc. On these days here. So if you want to take a picture of this on your camera, pretty much your last day, your due date for all this stuff is going to be May 19th. And if you have not seen or have not been in these lessons, you'll notice that these lessons are not long. They're not 20 questions long. I think they might be 10, something like that. But even those 10 are like a quick 10, just to make sure you've at least got the right idea. And here's the thing, for those of you who have been working with me, you should notice that you've already covered 9.2a, 9.2b, etc. And so I am doing this video today for those of you who are doing the work so far. And so what you should notice is, if you've been working, then you're already 2 weeks ahead, and so you can actually finish, you would finish here, because it would be 9.4a, 9.4b, 12.2, 12.3, 12.3, 12.4, 12.6, 12.6, 12.7, 12.7, something like that. Either way, what ends up being around there, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, so again, for those of you who are ahead, who have actually been working, you'll actually be done with me on May 6th, but again, everything is due on May 19th. Whatever grades you have in there is going to determine whatever you have there. So just keep that in mind as you continue working. Also keep in mind that you do need to know this stuff, especially if you plan on moving to your next class, because they expect you to know certain things. Yes, we are going to be working until May 19th, but again, these are just general concepts. I'm not asking you to do anything spectacular. All you need to do is just make sure you pay attention, do your job, and outside of today's lesson, which is solved by factoring, there's really nothing else to do. Now, I will say that if you are not ready for 9.4a, which is solved by factoring, you might as well go ahead and go back to 9.2 or whatever lesson that it is. It's on the Ed Puzzle. But like I said, other than that, this is what we're doing. I think the videos are in order on your Ed Puzzle, actually on your Google Classroom. So if you go back about 2 weeks or so, you should see the video that you need. But even if you want to just do this, that's fine. Just know that the assignments that are up on your page are there, and that you need to make sure you watch them. This is a two-part lesson. Part 1 is going to discuss the general concept of solving by factoring, and also give you problems based on a general concept while giving you 1 day of review in general factoring. So the actual homework for part 1 is brief. The big part of the homework is your factor review, so you can actually make sure you remember how to do it. Part 2 is going to actually represent the process with some tricks. So how does factoring, or how does solving by factoring work? Looking at this problem here, it's actually looking for the value or values that can be substituted for x that result in the answer of 0. Consider that x plus 5 is being multiplied by x minus 3. Also consider that anything multiplied times 0 is 0. So 0 times 10, 0. 15 times 0, 0. Negative 21 times 0 is 0. 0 times 1/3 is 0. So anything times 0 is going to be 0. Alright? So likewise, if we can make the x minus 3 equal 0, or pretty much if we can make the x plus 5 equal 0, then we found our answer. Just like if we can make x minus 3 equal 0, then we found our answer. And we do this by simply setting each factor equal to 0. Now, some of you, again, probably have already seen this process, but officially this is how you do it. Once you have this times that equals 0, which is why we have to know how to factor, what you do is you say, if my first factor equals 0, or my second factor equals 0, then I have found my answer. Again, if x plus 5 equals 0, which is what we want, because if that equals 0, we're done, or x minus 3 equals 0, then we're done. And so you end up solving this using algebra, which means your first answer is x equals negative 5. You solve this using algebra, which means your second answer is x equals 3. Now let's go back real quick and check. If I was to take a -5 and put it here, -5 plus 5 is 0. -5 plus 3 is -8, but 0 times -8 is 0. If I was to put a 3 in here, 3 plus 5 is 8, but 3 minus 3 is 0, which means 8 times 0 is 0, and those are your two answers. I believe you need to type them in using comma. So -5, comma 3, and I think that would usually do it. So real quick examples on what you'll see on the computer. Again, you'll see a problem like this, and again, what you want to do is make sure you understand this is already set up for you. It's already set equal to 0, so you'll have 3x minus 4 equals 0, or x plus 1 equals 0. You will then solve using the algebraic skills that we should already have. So 3x equals 4, divide by 3, and x is equal to 4/3. Here, subtract 1, and x equals -1. And so you would type 4/3, comma, -1 is your answer. It even works in the situation where we pulled out a GCF, because this is your first factor. Your first factor is 4x. Your second factor is 2x minus 3. And so that would be where you go. Of course, if you divide by 4, you get x equals 0 here. And over here, you do the usual to finish it off. So again, that is the main point of today's lesson, and there's not a lot of those. I think there's 4 of those on your homework. Again, the general idea I usually tell students is to practice it until you've got it down. But I don't think it's really hard to solve by factoring. I think the hard part about solving by factoring is the factoring. So that is what the second part of this video is, real quick, and it's not a long portion of the video because, again, if this leaves you too far behind, you should go back to 8.5 through 8.8, which should still be on Edpuzzle. I don't usually pull my videos down, so if you go back through Google Classroom and scroll up or down, however you want to view that, and go back to 8.5 through 8.8, it actually will tell you about what's going on. But you do have to know how to factor to do tomorrow's work, and so I did put some factoring questions on there. Again, not a lot. I think there's 10 to 12 questions on homework, and 6 of them to 8 of them are factoring. So I don't know off the top of my head, but all I know is when we saw this, we were supposed to say we're looking for numbers that multiply to equal whatever the first times the third is. Since there's a 1 times that, it multiplies to equal 20 and adds to make the middle number, which is -9. You were then supposed to make a tree for the top number, which is 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. You're then supposed to say if the 9 is negative, that means the big side had to be negative, and the only way I can get a positive 20 through multiplication is if the signs were the same. Again, that's something you were supposed to know. We know the numbers are 4 and 5, and then what we also learned, if you remember, is that because there's nothing here, you can actually use the shortcut, or it's not a shortcut, but it's an observation skill, which is to put these two numbers into the parentheses. If there was a number there, we would do something else, which we're going to talk about on this third one here. But again, I hope you remember that. Again, if there's nothing attached, once you find the numbers, you simply take those numbers and put them in the parentheses next to whatever your variable is. Alright. Another one that we saw was if you had something like this with 2 terms in which both of them are perfect squares. This is x times x. That's 7 times 7. That you simply put x plus 7, x minus 7. Again, those are your 2 quote-unquote shortcuts, but again, they're not really shortcuts. They're just observation things that you know after you do it enough times. This is the one that everybody hates, which is the one where you have to actually do all the work. Multiplies to be -30. Adds to be 1. Again, make your tree for 30 if necessary. And again, I am going kind of fast, but that's because you should already kind of know this anyway. Adds to be 1, which means it's positive, which means that these numbers should be positive. The only way you get a -30 is if these numbers are negative, and the numbers that make 1 are these two. I can't use a shortcut because there's a 3 there, but if you remember, what we do is we use this to split your middle term. because if we were to take negative 5x plus 6x, you still get x, which means that you just gave it a facelift. Remember that we then split it down the middle. We then did the GCF. You can't take anything out of 3 and 5, but you can take off an x. Remember, we copy the sign. What we can take out of 6 and 10 is a 2. Also remember that we usually just copy this over, but just to show you, 2 times 3, 6, 2 times 5, 10. And that the last thing we did was took off the common portion and left whatever was there. So again, if you have an issue with those, go back to those videos, watch those until it gets into your head. But I did actually remind you, or those of you who are working and trying to actually remember that we were still in school, you got a chance to kind of look at this over the last month or so, so you should be at least decent at it now. 5x squared minus 15x. This is another two-part thing here, but the thing you should notice here is that they're not perfect squares, but you can take off a 5, and both of these have at least one x, so that would be one where when you can't do perfect squares and you can't use this process, that you just see if there's anything you can take off. And I can take off a 5 and an x, and I'm left with x minus 3 as my answer. So 5x times x, 5x squared, 5x times negative 3, negative 15x, and that is that. So again, if you're moving on to this, that's fine, but just remember that all of those lessons are actually what you're being graded on. It is not just the stuff that actually I showed you the plan. It's chapter 9, chapter 12, and chapter 10. So it is set up for you to finish, but hopefully you did a little bit of work before this point so you can actually relax a little bit earlier than that. But other than that, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good day. If you need an online calculator, you need to go to desmos.com/scientific. I think there might be a video on there back in the earlier portions where I talked about that, but I'm not sure. But like I said, just make sure that you check that out if you need it. But other than that, like I said, if you do need help, make sure you take a screenshot of the actual problem on the computer. I do not need to see your paper. I need to see the computer. If there's work on the paper, I need to see the work, but last I need to see the screenshot of the problem on the computer, as well as any work that you have, and either email it to me or text it to me. Whatever way works best for you, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. The key thing is, I can't answer how do I do this. I can answer as in CAN, what did I do wrong. Don't just text me something and say how do I do this, because obviously the video is telling you how to do it. But if you at least have work, if you've at least tried it out, if you've at least missed it, just send me that picture, and then either move on or wait. But like I said, I'll eventually get back to you and let you know what you did wrong. I obviously am going to have about 100 and something people now supposedly working at one time, so there's no telling when I'll be able to help you out. But other than that, go ahead and go over to your Math Excel, and good luck.